Martin Rooney, welcome to Roll with the Punches. How are you?
I am good. I'm ready to roll. Excited to talk to everybody wherever. Hopefully everybody is either in Oz or in the Southern Hemisphere right now is listening to this. So hopefully you understand my accent, but I'm ready to rock.
I love the accent. I've been really excited to speak to you for two reasons. One, you were referred to me by Bobby Cappuccio, and anyone that Bobby puts under my nose, my ears are perked up and ready to listen. And the other one is when I Googled you, you're one of those people, one of those rare people that you look at a couple of photos and go, this guy, I'm going to like this guy. This guy's high energy. I could tell that from like the first couple of photos that come up in Google, and I knew. And then as soon as you jumped on Zoom, bam, you delivered. I was like, yep, here he is. Martin's in the house.
Well, that is my style. And I think that's the first time I ever heard I even got high energy from pictures. Maybe I can just stop presenting and just put pictures out there. It would probably save my voice a little bit, but no, hey, and I'm excited. And Bobby has been a friend for 2 decades, and man, shout out to him too, because that's one of the most intelligent guys I know. And we always have some of the greatest conversations. And in particular lately, because of all the lockdowns and different things, we did get to talk a lot more because we were both just not traveling as much or presenting as much. So it gave us an opportunity to really connect even more. And again, that guy's brain, there are not a lot of brains on earth like that.
Mate, he is such an asset to my life. I remember when I started this podcast and I thought, gee, I wonder if I reached out, if he'd come on my show. And now we're such good mates. And I walk away from a conversation with Bobby and I feel like 10% smarter every time I speak to this guy. Like this, my brain grows just from having him. I learn about everything and myself and how I think, and like just speaking to him about anything is, it's an educational in itself.
Absolutely.
Hey,
wait, what's that? No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you've got a hell of a profile, founder of Training for Warriors and a pioneer in strength and conditioning, and you've written 8 books. So I feel like you might be a bit of a Bobby too.
Well, I would say Bobby and I have different styles, and I don't know if I have the same depth of knowledge that he has. I mean, I don't know if anyone does. Yeah, he could go deep, but I would say I'm more, as you're probably feeling already, I love to dive into topics, but I love to turn them into entertainment so that people really can learn from it and grow. And I think that's my skill, is to get people excited about information and then chase it even further for themselves. Where, again, and that's not a knock, but Bobby, like, he's entertaining too, but man, when he can read something and 10 years later continue to quote that exact something. So
I know, right?
Yeah, that one, I don't have that one.
I'm like the polar opposite of him. Last night, I can't remember where I was. See, I can't remember where I was, but I remember I was with someone, and somebody introduced themselves, and I spoke to them, and then we walked off, and I went, I've already forgotten that person's name. This is what I battle with them. I take classes in the boxing gym, and I crack it all the time because I have to check people, and I turn up, there's 30 people in the class. They're already in the gym when I get there. There's a whole bunch of classes. There's 30 faces. There's 30 names on the board. And somehow I'm meant to know which face belongs to which name. And I'm like, this is just not my jam. Like this, I'm never going to be this girl. And I work so hard to try and remember. And some of them fall into place, but sometimes it's like I'll get them in pairs. There's these 2 people are friends. They always train together. I'll remember the 2 names, but I'll be buggered if I can remember which name belongs to which person. And there's only so many times you can ask. So then I just stop asking.
I would suggest a great rule of thumb is call everybody champ in the gym and you'll be all right.
Well, that's how I'm rolling, so that's good.
Yeah,
that's
and
good.
they'll be like, man, that Tiffanee, she's so great. I love her, man. She
always calls me a champ.
Yeah, it's like, what's up, champ? What's up, champ? And and where I learned that, I've seen a number of my friends that run martial arts studios, and that's what they do, and everybody loves them because same thing, they have a hard time remembering hundreds of names, so a little technique there.
The problem is, I'll shout out, "Keep your left hand up, champ," and like 30 people will turn around and look at me. I'll be like, "Yeah, all of you."
Yeah, you're all champs in my book.
Hey, have you always been into the fitness and the training world, or was that a pivot for you?
Yeah, no, not a pivot. My mom was a physical education teacher, so since pretty much birth, I was raised, man, you get 8 hours of sleep, you always train, breakfast is an important meal of the day, and sports is, should be an important part of your life. And I chased that when I was young. I went to university and studied exercise science, went on to get my master's degree, and then became an orthopedic therapist too. And I was a track and field athlete in college. I was on the U.S. bobsled team.
Oh, wow.
And then started pursuing the martial arts at a very high level, which led me to training those guys and then training a lot of NFL guys and a lot of, stars in sport. And, and now I'm here with, training for Warriors facilities around the world and really, now trying to help the next generation of coaches. So where I guess you could say pivot would be, I'm speaking less now about the actual exercise itself or showing off 100 different versions of a push-up. And now I'm teaching people how to coach. And in particular, my latest book is about how to create a great culture within either the business or the team that you are coaching. Mm-hmm. And that's where I'm particularly spending my time now, because I want to affect the next generation or impact them as much as possible. And me showing off, another type of Zercher squat isn't, I did that one already. And hey, it's nothing bad, because a lot of people sometimes will say, hey, I love that old stuff. Can't you still just do all the old stuff? And I think sometimes you move on and you want to show off the things you're doing now.
Yeah, I'm actually fascinated by, I guess, the science of culture and the science of teamwork. I've always taken part in solo sports. I mean, not many sports. I didn't do many sports at all until I was 29 and hopped in the boxing ring. But I guess my preference has always been that solo kind of effort where I put in and I am relying on only myself. But I'm absolutely fascinated by the science and the psychology of what makes a team perform in sport.
Yeah. Well, here's what an interesting thing I would say is, I don't know if I mentioned that, but I was one of the original coaches for mixed martial arts. So I started training with the Gracie family in the 1990s. This is before the UFC is big, before people are familiar with it. And it's interesting though, even though it's an individual sport, there is always still a team and a culture that surrounds that. So think about it. You didn't do it yourself. You either had coaches, you were a member of a gym, and there is a culture there. There is a culture that is either healthy and exists or makes you better, or there's a culture that could be negative or toxic and actually bring you down. And I'm sure if you've trained, you've experienced both. But I like to tell everybody, man, or here would be a great line. Ready, Tiffany? I got a big idea that I talk about in the new book. But are you ready? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can't use the word culture if it's only one person. Culture only works when there's people. Like culture at the fundamental level can't exist if it's only one. It's got to have at least two, and then there's a culture between them, 3, 4, 10, and then that culture develops. And that, at least that's how I understand it, but that's how I like to explain it too. But that people always think, they say, oh, I have this business, but I don't have a culture. And no, you do. You just didn't design it. Somebody else did. But there's a culture. There's a way you talk. There's a way everyone interacts. There's a way that things are delivered. And that is your culture. And what I'm trying to push forward now, which is exciting for me, is I ask the big question, can you design it? Like, is it something you can engineer? And I truly believe it is. And most people have never even thought about it. And that's why a lot of businesses fail. That's why you'll see one team that wins and then the years later they lose. And it got me excited enough, to write my latest book, so and it's all just about, culture.
Yeah. You bring to mind, so I'm a I do business networking, and I do it every fortnight. We meet in a little group. It's very structured. Now, years and years and years and years ago, I was a member of a group that did it weekly. They're an international group, and I met this bunch of people there, and they're very, very stringent in their guidelines. We had a really awesome culture in our group at the time. And then a few of the great personalities dwindled away, and it really changed. Now, my good mate, Darren, he started, and this new networking group that I'm in now, he started it a few years ago, and he said, he got all the cool kids from back then, and he goes, I'm going to try this. Now he's got 20-something hubs around Australia, and what blows my mind, because the actual running of the meeting and the structure of everything is really very similar. We go for breakfast, everyone stands up, everyone says for 60 seconds, this is me, this is what I do. Then one person has 10 minutes to really dive into their business, and then we pass around what we've done and what business we've gained or passed to each other, and then we leave and we do it all again another week. Now, that's all the same, but he has managed, when people come and visit, they will actually say, I've been to XYZ and I hated it, but this is so different. And I know that we deliberately and he deliberately made this and built this, but it still blows my mind that it's come through so damn clearly every time someone visits. Like, that's amazing. So you can do it, but it's so funny, because how do you teach that? How do you teach that? Can you if someone doesn't understand culture?
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, culture is ultimately the responsibility first of either whoever you want to call the leader or the teacher or the coach or the business owner themselves. And then it is their responsibility to define or understand what culture they want for their business or their employees or their customers. And then they've got to understand how to deliver that, but then also uphold it and discipline it as well. And what's interesting, you say about the example you gave, I'm on, say, business 3.0, and now I feel like I've really got it right. So Training for Warriors, we have this incredible culture. It's the way we speak. It's the way we interact. It works universal all over the world. But it's interesting that when I look back, I was only able to do that by making so many mistakes with other businesses and other teams, and being a really terrible leader for a long time until I figured out how to do it right. And I guess what I am agreeing with you with is you can change it and influence it, but I'm trying to get the information to people much sooner so they don't have to learn it the hard way and make so many mistakes up front to maybe still be in business long enough to learn it. But here's a bold statement, because I know before we started recording, we were talking about the pandemic and the lockdowns. And what I have noticed, and this is a bold statement, and I can at least say it's true within my own organization, and we had hundreds of gyms, going. The ones that not only survived, but thrived during the lockdowns and the quarantines were the ones that entered in with the greatest cultures, with the most positive cultures, with the strongest relationships with their customers, their strongest relationships with their staff. And the ones that had the poorest cultures, many of them are not in business anymore. People didn't stand by. They didn't continue to stick with the business. They removed their membership or they got out. And this was a great revealer for me. Almost you pulled the veil away and saw, holy cow, culture was perhaps the most important thing for the survival of a business if it ever met with great challenge, and it was easy to maybe ignore that in times of not great challenge. But at least anecdotally, from my experience, I predict the businesses that come through this and continue to either expand or grow afterwards will be the ones that had the greatest culture, or a culture they already understood going into it versus trying to figure it out during it, which could be very dangerous.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. One, do you think that people have to experience a level of mistakes of their own in order to move in the right direction? Do you think we can completely avoid?
Yeah, I think you can completely avoid it. I'm going to give a great one for everybody listening right now. There are two types of mistakes I have made or learned about in my life. The first type are called expensive mistakes. These are the ones that either cost you money, they cost you your relationships, they cost you your business. They're expensive because you make them. But then there are inexpensive mistakes. Those are the mistakes of other people that you hear about them and learn about them before you ever get an opportunity to make the other mistake yourself, and then you don't make that mistake. So the goal in life, my answer for you, Tiffany, would be, hey, no one's going to not make any mistakes in their life. That's part of life. But if you can learn from the greats, that's why whether it's reading books, watching videos, chasing down the people, whoever it is in the world that is doing what you want to be doing, you can learn where they are or the mistake or from the mistakes they've made so you don't make them. And hey, taking it as a boxing analogy, I don't want to let you try to teach yourself boxing, learn everything wrong and a bunch of horrible habits, hands are down, different things, and then get punched in the face enough until you learn to put your hands up. No, you're gonna get around somebody that's made that mistake, learn the right things first, the first time through, and already be sharp. So using that boxing analogy or the business one that I gave too, I think the goal in life is to make as few mistakes as possible from learning from the great people. And that's what masterminds and mentorships and all those things are about. But a person has to, I guess you would call it, they have to be open enough and they have to be courageous enough to admit that they do want to learn and don't want to make that mistake, which unfortunately, and in my book, I talk about it, ego often gets in the way and is the killer of culture. It's the killer of businesses and it's the killer of relationships too.
I'm thinking about people that go, I'm going to take the next step. I'm going to build a business. I'm going to go from either being a technician and being my own person to having a business and employing people, or I'm going to buy a business and run it. And I'm thinking about the attributes, maybe more the attributes than the skills. What do you think is most important? Like, there's so much, like having done it myself, there are so many things that are important. Like everyone that's an employee that thinks about business all says at some point, I mean, if I was the boss, I'd do this. I'd be like this. I'd treat my people good. And within 5 minutes, experience changes their platform of perception, wrong or right. So all of a sudden, they're a little bit out of they're a little bit or a lot out of their comfort zone. They've got to do things they're not comfortable with. There's relationship dynamics, there's leadership, there's empathy, there's all of these emotions. You're sitting in the middle of it and then you're angry and you're like, well, no wonder bosses, and then they don't trust anyone. And then so what do you think if people are thinking right now, well, because people are making a lot of changes at the moment because of COVID, what would be the attributes or the skill sets or the things that you would say, go and work on that or go and check out how you cope with that?
Okay, well here, I think I might have the answer for you, which hopefully we're going to have some resolution, right?
Right.
Because I hear about some of the things you were saying hit some nerves, right? And let's use the gym industry because that's what I'm very familiar with. The typical course of a fitness person is they're interested in fitness. They get a job in a fitness facility. Could be a gym, could be a boxing place, whatever. Then that person works there either long enough to build up a clientele or that they've maxed out about what they can make. And then they start saying, like you said, I should run this place, or I could do this on my own, or I know what I'm doing. And now I should have a business because that's the next step. And then I've watched time and time again that these people leave, they open up, they grind for a year or two, and then they're out of business. And then they're not just out of business, they're usually out of fitness and they just go do something else. And here, for anyone that is anywhere on that path right now, here's the biggest thing I would challenge everybody, because you used a very important word that goes all the way back from some of my earliest lessons in business, called the EMyth. And I think maybe you were quoting that from Gerber when you said technician. But when I speak at big events, I will say big business events, I'll say, hey, how many entrepreneurs do we have in the crowd? And guess how many hands go up? All of them. Yeah. Like every hand goes up.
I forgot I was on a podcast then. I put my hands in the air.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? So when I go and I say, how many entrepreneurs are there? If there's 1,000 people, 1,000 hands go up. And I say, nope. I say, nope. Impossible. I said, impossible. No, see, you like the word entrepreneur. You think it sounds sexy or cool to call yourself the boss. But if I really dove deep in, most people are technicians. And here's what I'm going to say. That's where they're happy. That's what they love. And that's what they're probably best suited for. And I guess what I'm saying right before we even go into, hey, can you learn to be a leader, or can you learn to be an entrepreneur? I think you can, but I'll ask the person first, but is that what you really want? Or was that what you were born to do? And I'm going to say something pretty bold here. I have had multiple businesses, global. I've done all this writing, speaking, all these different things. I don't consider myself an entrepreneur. I don't call myself an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is this, in my mind, this risk taker that is just in business for the sake of business. It doesn't matter what it is. And they're going to take chances and risks and they're going to lead and drive and go nuts. That's not me. I'm a technician. I'm really great at what I do. And I've figured out ways to tell people how to do that. And my leadership skills have really painfully grown over the last 20 years of doing that. But I hope though it's starting to explain I'm trying to remember the original idea, but I'm trying to let people understand you got to ask yourself who you are, because if you smash yourself into a position that really you weren't supposed to do, you just did it because of ego, or you just wanted prestige, it's probably not going to work. You can learn it, but it's going to be painful. And does that make sense a little bit? That's just a personal theory of mine.
Yeah. As you were talking about that, I was thinking I've always had a personal gripe with the term entrepreneur. And it's funny because I remember once Googling it to have a look at the actual definition. I was like, oh, well, I mean, I guess it is the definition that most people use it, but I think it's that bravado that people, I'm an entrepreneur, and they're not necessarily people that are taking great risk for things. You're a sole trader. Like you're a contractor. You choose not to have a boss. That's all you are,
you're a sole proprietor or self-employed. You are not an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And that's, and hey, people don't like to hear that. Hey, you know what? Another one that gets me, you know how many people I meet that they call themselves the CEO of their company, and they're not aware that, at least in America, you have to have a full-on corporation. So I'm not a CEO. I don't call myself the CEO of my organization. So it's just titles. But then, so when I see people do this, immediately I question their aptitude, because they don't even know, they don't understand the titles they're even giving themselves. So, and hey, for everybody listening, I guess we're also in a day and age on the opposite side. At least I don't know how it's going there in Oz, but in America, you can call yourself anything you want now.
You just read my mind. You read my mind, because I was thinking.
So I'm not telling you, I'm not telling anybody not to do it, but I would challenge you to understand and really think through what titles are before you give yourself them. And, but don't anybody cancel me out because I said you can't call yourself an entrepreneur.
I get it. I think of all of the people, especially this, I mean, it's twofold. I sound judgy when I say it, but there's people make up these titles that make you, well, what even is that? I can't even think of any crazy.
I'm the director. Yeah, I'm the director of awesomeness for my company. Yeah, I heard that one. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
or even like actual qualifications, like I'm a transformational bloody something. They've made it up a niche like it's an industry. And I'm like, what even is that? I had someone on LinkedIn recently reach out and attempt to connect with me, and she looked about 12. And her this is another now I'm just having an immature rant. Look what you've done, Martin.
Here we go.
You turned me into a 2-year-old. But she had, I hate the term, you want high ticket clients, especially from someone that looks 12. So she was in her little bio, it was like, I help people get high ticket clients. And it was like, you want to earn 50 grand a month. It was like 50 grand a month sales or something. And so I went in and I looked at her resume. She had just made up these, she was a coach. So she'd done a life coaching course and maybe some whatever other add-ons to that. And she'd not stuck at one niche or niche. Do you say niche there? That's just sounds weird to me. But
either way, niche. I'll accept either.
John Lee Dumas was the first one to say niche to me. And I'm like, what is he talking about? And then I realized that you guys say niche and we say niche. Anyway, she had not stuck to it. She was a love coach 1 minute and then she was a something else. She was trying to find her thing. But I was like, you have no right to try and tell. You've probably struggled to make $4 a month by the look of things. You haven't found your ideal client yet. And now you're saying at 12 years old that you're selling people on high ticket clients that want to sell, that's a promise you have never even delivered once, I believe.
Well, hey, that's the world. And for everybody listening, we're all at different stages in our lives or different parts of the path. I mean, whoever that person was, unfortunately, she's been someone else's high ticket client for long enough. Now she make money selling whatever it was she was getting taught. But I will say, everybody's doing their thing, but it's always worth, if you're going to put somebody in charge of some aspect of your life. For instance, one that I really love, another example like you just talked about, is I get approached every day by wealth managers or financial advisors or all these people. And do you know what my first question is for them?
What do you drive, or what do you own?
No, I say, are you independently wealthy? Are you so rich you don't have to work? You just do this for fun? Because if you don't, then you can't teach me how to do that, because that's what I want to be. Like, I want to be fiscally secure, and you're not. So how can I have you manage my money? And I'll tell you what, I did it for years and years and years and years until I finally found the right people. Yeah. And it's almost, so using that as an example too. So I guess we're helping people out on many levels today. So guys, anybody that's managing your money, you should ask them directly how they manage their money, because actually by managing yours, they get some of yours, but that doesn't mean that they know what they're doing. And that's probably true of many, many industries. Just like, hey, if you had needed brain surgery and it was very specific, you'd go find the best. What we're saying is you should probably go find the best in all the things that you do. And that's something that I always prided myself on, was surrounding myself with really good people. And that's been one of my secrets to how I've been able to do what I did too.
Mm. Well, here's one of my secrets, not a good secret, a bad secret. Here's what, on the flip side of that, here's what I think is a downfall for me, and probably a lot of people, I'm sure, is the inaction on certain things because I don't know who to choose, wealth managers or coaches, business coaches, whatever it is, sports coaches. I always want the best, and there's got to be an energy and a good communication. I've got to love the person, but I've got to understand what the science behind what they're teaching me, and I want to know that they know their stuff, and it's got to all that stuff. And the amount of times that I will circle around, and then 6 months down the track, I still haven't pulled the trigger on anything.
Yeah. Well, what I would say is, what I'm hearing is, hey, you do your, you're doing your research, but then there eventually becomes a time when you got to stop what I call getting ready to get ready. So
Yeah.
a lot of people, they just keep getting ready to get ready. So, hey, there is something to be said. There's nothing more powerful than action. And here's what I would tell you on that one is, hey, well, what's the worst that happens? You pick one of those people, but then you realize after a month or two, it's not working out. Then you get rid of them and you find another one, you know? So nothing is final and nothing is fatal. And once I learned those kind of things, I started taking action on a lot of things much faster too. But I do agree with you though, doing that initial research first. Don't just jump into something and say, hey, I'll just keep, you know, because somebody in particular, if it's managing your money or other things, they can lose that too. So you want to make sure you're doing the right stuff. But hey, for business coaches, I would suggest that you have numerous over your lifespan. Same thing as sport coaches, everything, because so many people have so many different things to offer. And you want to make sure that you're not missing out on some of those things too. So over my lifetime, say it was either fitness or the martial arts or business, man, I've had so many different coaches, and each one of them has given me something great. And maybe each one of them has let me down in some way too, but that's why you move on.
100%. Actually, I agree with that. I had quite a few different boxing coaches over my time for various reasons. And I just look back and go, what a strength. And obviously, and for a lot of people in that, especially in that sport, people are all about loyalty, but also, man, I got to learn from some of the best. And then I got to learn from the next person in a different way. And I got to then make my own decisions, and it was so valuable. So I definitely agree with that in terms of not just sticking with one for the whole time.
Yeah, but I will say too, and you just brought up something, because remember, my martial arts background, and you just brought up first was technician, now you just hit loyalty right there. And I'll tell you what though, in the martial arts, and there is still, whether you want to call it dogma or tradition, hey, sometimes when you join a club or a team, you're on that club or that team for life, you know? And so I do also appreciate, for anybody listening, if you're in those spaces, that it can be very difficult to have to make the decision that, man, this isn't offering me what I want anymore, or this isn't a healthy culture for me anymore. I need to move on. Hey, I appreciate how hard that is too. So I don't want anybody to think that it's just like, oh yeah, just, hey, if it's not working out, go find the next place and you go. I know the baggage and the challenges that comes with that, as well as all the friends you've made, or all the, the people that you know in relation to that other coach or that other gym. And those are really tough things. But ultimately, I do believe if you listen to your gut enough, you know what's right. And I'll always challenge everybody, you got to do what's best for you. Because a great line, and I know people have heard it before, but the easiest way to be unhappy is to try to make everybody else around you happy. Yeah. And man, life is too short to never go chase your dreams because you're too worried about offending someone that you know you should leave, right? So,
but I also reckon
other life advice there.
I also reckon the ability to have a bit of self-awareness on really why, and whether what you're feeling is actually what you need. I remember getting referred to a business coach years ago, and we caught up for a coffee. This person had raved about him. This guy's awesome. He doesn't normally see people, but I'll get you a meeting. So I had a coffee with him. I left that coffee. I was pissed off that this person introduced us. I was like, I hate that guy. I hate that guy. I want to punch him in the throat. And I went home and I was like, because he was abrupt and he just said things. He said a couple of things to me that just got under my skin. And then I went, maybe this is the guy I need to have a couple of sessions with. And so I moved forward, and I was like, I rang him. I said, I hated you. But then, I think and then for me.
And then after the first meeting, then you punched him in the throat.
But, it was that ability to go, well, hang on, what did he trigger? Am I being overprotective of my current perception? And is there something pretty important that I could learn off just listening to this guy that's had 1,000 years more experience than me? And I learned a lot. But I think sometimes we have to just check in. Where's that, do I want to leave because I feel shit and I feel like I'm not good enough, and that then this coach doesn't baby and mollycoddle me? Well, that's not a coach. Maybe that's what you need. Maybe you got to do some work, some inner work.
Yeah. No, I like what I heard there, that you were challenged, and then it's like, hey, maybe that is what I need. That's how I'm going to grow. And it's not always comfortable. And maybe sometimes the hardest thing, and for everybody listening, the hardest thing, you know what one of the hardest things is to say? I don't know. Meaning you say, like, I don't know the answer to that, or I don't know how to do this. I need someone's help. Like, I really need that. That's a hard thing for people, right? And I know for myself, especially being a dad to 4 daughters, a coach to so many people, it's hard to say when you don't know. But I am okay with that now, because if it's something I don't know, I'm not going to pretend to talk about it or have an idea on it. You'll probably only look worse. But that's the only way you grow, is by admitting you don't know something and then go seeking out the person that does. And that seems to be a little bit of our theme today, which is pretty cool, where, hey, I didn't know where it was going to go. And I think we're definitely delivering some good advice, without a doubt, for the people listening.
I never know where it's going to go, Martin. I never know where it's going to go.
Well, you didn't even know where you were last night, you said. So, of course, how are we going to know where this is going to go? I'm happy you still remember my name right now. I'm good with that.
Little secret, it's written on the Zoom screen. Occasionally when people have their business name instead of their real name there, I get a bit of a panic. I'm like, oh, what if I forget their name?
I'm glad I didn't put in something funny. Then you'd be calling me that by the end.
What lights you up about creating culture, about teaching how to create culture?
That's a great question, where I think what attracts me to it is it's the energy, or it's what happens when you see a team really doing something great. Where, hey, other stuff about myself. So I'm the high school track coach in town, and because of the lockdowns, and sport went away for a while, but it did at least come back this year. And it really reminded me just how much I really enjoy setting the culture of a team. And we had a big banquet only a few weeks ago, because now in the States, we're in the summertime right now. I know you guys are kind of the reverse from us. But so when we had the big banquet, I did all the speaking and firing up the parents and the kids. And when I thought it was over, the kids said, no, it's not over. Hang on. We want to say a few things. And the kids all got up. And not only did I see they brought that energy and the fire too that they had learned, but then the ones that did refer to me, all kept saying how that's what they loved. They didn't say they loved the running. They didn't say they loved the hard work. It was the fun. It was the fun, the culture, how we did this thing, or how we clapped for everybody. It was the lessons that they learned. And I think that's what jazzes me up, because I know it's what the world needs right now. I know it's something that I'm good at, that I like to teach. So I think when you find that spot, and here's the lesson here for everybody listening, you got to find what jazzes you up. And then you have to find the intersection of a job that can pay you to do it and where you can serve the most people. And if you can find that, if you find that thing, I call it the intersection. It's kind of like the intersection of my passion and my purpose, but like people need it. Like, holy cow, that is where my energy comes from. Because people do ask that too. They'll say, are you always like this? Are you jazzed up? And my answer is no, I'm not jazzed up. If you take me to like a furniture store, I'm not going to be jazzed up. I'm going to be like asleep wanting to get out of there. But man, if you get me on a podcast talking to somebody cool like this, or you get me on a sports field or around a business or a team, and they need what I got, man, I'm the most on fire guy in the world. And I think everybody could be that. Many people ignore that thing. And hey, we hinted at it today, right? Like the guy that's trying to be an entrepreneur, that's not an entrepreneur, and now they're grinding and they're suffering in their business. Yeah, they're not going to have high energy and be attractive and on fire. They're going to be bummed and complaining. And it's because they didn't they didn't follow what their heart was telling them to do. And so for anybody listening right now, I'm challenging you, as with all the things we did, because you heard it today. If you don't take action, nothing works.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's just entertainment. But I would challenge everybody to really dig deep. Like, well, what are you passionate about? And then, hey, what are you called to do? What are you kind of born to do? Like, do you know that? I know you've seen glimpses of it. And then how could you turn that into a career where you help a lot of people? And man, if you could figure that out, I don't care what it pays. I don't care what everyone else says. That would be a really cool thing to take a crack at. And you'll probably be really successful too.
So you know, the other thing about culture, I think that culture dictates culture in one area, culture in one thing, one place, and normally that's either your sporting endeavors if you're a professional athlete or spend a lot of time doing that, or it's at work and business. But it changes every aspect of your life, every aspect. And I think when people, the worst thing I hear is people that, I hate my job, but it pay, right? So they justify all the reasons they should stay. It pay as well as this, as that. I'm good at it. I'm trained at it. But if you are in a space, like when we went into the lockdown, I wasn't living my best life before that. I wasn't in a space with an agenda and an energy management. The ecosystem of how I had to work and be in business didn't match me. It didn't work for me. So then when I got out of that and I started doing this podcast with gyms that were bleeding money and no income because the government had shut it down, and I had nothing but a hefty little rent to pay along the way and some food to put on my table. But I started doing this thing, and all of a sudden I pulled in the people around me. That I got a gig with the ambulance paramedics, and we created the culture we had online and the hub that we created, because that was important to me, because that was what I connected with when I boxed. That first boxing gym when I walked into, and I hashtagged for years, Fight Family, because they were my family, and that's why I turned up. I didn't never turn up so I'd win a bloody medal. I mean, that was icing on the cake. There was other stuff, but the reason I kept walking through the door and the reason I fell in love with this was for that. But the rest of my life changed. The energy, because the energy people give you, and then you walk out the door with an energy, and then what you do at home or how you interact with other people, everything changes from the culture of where you are immersed in for your work or your business or your sport.
Absolutely. And now watch this. Now you just said something that's absolutely profound. So you see how work culture and your experience there affects, everything outside at home. Now watch this one. You ready? Now we're going to flip it. I also say the culture at home affects everything else too. It affects the gym and it affects the work. And here's an example that is very personal to me. Well, first I'll just say it general. Working with so many gym owners around the world, what I often experience is that the gym owner is into fitness and either their spouse or their children are not. And it creates a very tough challenge because they're not on the same page. They don't share the same culture. And then that guy goes to work and now he's kind of drained, and it's not as good because he's not getting that energy level built up at home. And I'll say, and I'm aware of it because I was experiencing the same thing. For many years when I was building my fitness companies, my wife, she was a teacher, and she would come home burned out, and then she didn't really want to work out anymore. And then now she's not eating good food. And then she was surrounding herself with her friends that they didn't eat good food. So I would be leaving at, say, 5 a.m. for the gym to open up, and her friends would be walking in with donuts. And I can remember, and I can remember just being like hands up like this. And she'd be like, oh, go do your gym thing. Go with your like gym friends. And I just remember being so drained before I even got there because things weren't right at home. And the great part of the story though is it did hit a crossroads. We had a lot of conversations. And then not only did we start training together, not only did she start getting involved in what we did, but now what I'm really proud to say is she is second in command of my company now. She works out probably more than I do. And the kids are so into it. My daughter is going to college for track and field in a few weeks for at the University of Notre Dame. And the whole thing is the culture turned around at home. And then that turned everything around for me everywhere else too. Because, now imagine the culture's great at work, but you don't want to go home. Like you go home and it's bad. So here's I guess what we can say. Culture is everywhere. And you got to make sure the culture is right in all of your spaces. If it's not right at home, it's going to affect work. If it's not right at work, it's going to affect home. If it's horrible at the gym, it's going to affect both. And so our jobs are to make sure we are surrounding ourselves with the right people, but we're addressing things when we know they're not the right situations. And man, I'll say it's the best thing I ever did, because if I had never addressed it, either I wouldn't have my businesses now or I wouldn't have my wife now. That's guaranteed. And it was only because, hey, here's another theme that we had today, because I took action on it. Because I knew what was up. I knew what was up and I took action. And I'll tell you what, a type A wife like mine, that was probably scarier than anybody I could have stepped on the mat with. So it was definitely, that was probably my scariest battle if somebody was going to ask me. But by fighting it, what's interesting, when you watch a fight, even if people really disliked each other or talked a lot before it, 90% of the time they hug afterwards. And it's like they got it out. So there was an old line. You're going to like this one. You ready? Because it's so opposite. And it's fighting solves everything. You ever heard, when I was a kid, they used to say, fighting doesn't solve anything. Fighting doesn't solve anything. And I'm like, no, every time I fight and we argue it out, and then it kind of solves a lot of stuff. So that might be a funny one for everybody today.
Yeah, but that's so true. And you talk about that, and I just think most people would have got to a certain point and gone, and I think they do this, we've changed, this is no longer working. And then that's the end. But to have the ability to hold on to culture and go, well, let's change the culture here. And look at everything like for your wife, that's just changed her health, her mindset, her performance. I look at all of that when I look at life. I'm like, if I can get people to buy into understanding that to be better in business, to sharpen your mind, how you move your body and what you put into it and how you experience the world physically actually affects. So if you want to be better in business, but you're ignoring your health and fitness or your movement, we need to change your perception on that. We need to get you understanding that there's direct link. So that's amazing. Like you just look at that and you go, like you've just saved her life, mate. Really?
Well, and hey, and I wish I could say I could take all the credit, but here would be some advice. Here's what I did. I knew it couldn't just be me. So what we did, and hey, we did some drastic stuff, is I had her start going to the gym and training with the coaches I knew really well, or other friends and neighbors that were into that. And it was tough for her at first. And I can remember her coming home and being sore, or coming home and you don't see results right away. But what I was supportive. When I did see things, I was like, wow, this is great. I celebrated the successes until it just became, it's really interesting. Here would be the way I would say it, Tiffany. She went from not working out and not eating right to, and on this side, you have always working out and almost can't not train, like you got to go to the gym and you got to eat right. Yeah. And we made this slow journey over to that. It was not overnight. I would say it might have been years or more, but it was worth the work. Yeah. Versus, like you said today, people are just like, yeah, this isn't working out. Let's get out. Let's ruin everybody's life. And I don't know, that I just wasn't, not only was I not prepared for that, but that wasn't what I wanted. I knew what was possible. And now it's kind of interesting. Now that was many years ago. So that was, say, 15 years ago too. But now it's just funny. Like she does her training. I do, so we don't like train together, but she trains, does her stuff. But our kids, I think the thing that saved it all, like you said, saved it, is my kids see a very fit mom and we eat right. And there's an attention to that. And just jumping into that for a second, you want to know the best 2 ways to love your kids? It's love your spouse and then be a great role model for your kids. And like, that's them. And I was not ready to throw all that away. You know, I have 4 daughters, so there was no way it was like, hey, I'm just going to go away because we're not working out right now, you know? So, you know, but hey, maybe somebody that helps, maybe somebody doesn't like to hear that, but I will say relationships are like organisms. They need constant work and don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm the best or I don't get yelled at all the time. Trust me, as you just heard, I got 5 women in the house and me, and that's it. Like, so I'm like the house idiot getting yelled at all the time. But we do try, and we know our culture is not about giving up here in our house. It's about, you know, doing what's right.
I love that. Before I ask you a little bit about sharing what's in your latest book for people, maybe you should think about your next book being something about culture of relationships.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever read any relationship books, because I'm single and have been for the vast majority of my life. But as you were talking about that, and I was thinking, to my knowledge, I've never thought of it that way. And I think that talking about the dynamics of 2 people having problems and then putting this beautiful culture in between them takes all of the like defensiveness and the shit out of the situation. You go, we need to improve the culture in between us rather than.
What you're going to love to hear, the new book is called High 10, but it's a sequel. So it's a sequel to a book that came out last year called Coach to Coach. And in both books, there are a number these are stories. It's a giant story. It's a fictional story, but with real stuff, you know, everything in it happened. And so you'll know, and it's great, you're going to love to hear it, is some of the storylines are the relationships between the husbands and wife, and in both books, it's going bad and they fix it. One from a coaching standpoint, that's in Coach to Coach, and then one from a culture standpoint, that's in High 10. So I already wrote it.
I love it. You know, I love it.
You just described my new book. Now we can be done. We're done.
What a pitch. What a pitch. Martin, how do my listeners follow you, access you? Do you have a website? Where can they buy your books?
Yeah, so the books are obviously wherever books are sold. They're on Amazon. The challenge is right now you can get Coach to Coach, but High 10 just released last week here in the States. And I don't know why, but it takes a few months before the books get all the way to Australia when they become available there.
They're in quarantine.
It's coming. Yeah, but it's coming, and everybody can, you can start with Coach to Coach. And then, but if you want to find me, I am the Martin Rooney on Instagram. I'm always putting up content there, but I'm Martin Rooney on Facebook. But you can check out my 2 websites, either coachinggreatness.com or trainingforwarriors.com. And I've got blogs, tons of information, and always out there trying to help. And hopefully today, hey, if you like this podcast, let Tiffanee know, and then maybe she brings me back and we cover other topics, because like we were just scratching the surface today, but I think we hit some nerves for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Look, I'll definitely have you back, because I feel like you're one of those podcasts. I've had a handful of them lately where I finish and I'm like, oh, I've got more energy than when I did going into this. So it's been a lot of fun for me. So thank you so much, Martin.
My pleasure.